Hey guys, tonight we slip into the shadowed alleys of ancient Athens, where the air smells of olive oil, sweat, and the metallic tang of power. You're not just hearing this story, you're living it. The moon hangs low over the Acropolis, casting long fingers of light between the columns of the Stoa Poikile. Somewhere in the darkness, a lyre plays, but it's not for joy, it's the sound of someone trying to drown out the whispers. And trust me, in this city, whispers cut deeper than any Spartan blade. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Right now, it's past midnight in Athens, 432 BCE, and the streets are anything but quiet. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not a tourist here, you're a shadow. Your sandals scuff against the uneven stones of the Panathenaic Way, where just hours ago merchants hawked everything from Persian spices to Thracian slaves. But the market's closed now, and the real deals happen in the dark. Up ahead, a cluster of men in Himeros, those draped robes that look elegant but hide daggers just as well, are huddled near the altar of the 12 gods. One of them laughs, a sound like gravel in wine. You catch a name: Himeros. Himeros. Desire. Fitting, because in Athens, desire isn't just a feeling, it's currency. And tonight it's buying a man. Historians still argue whether the Pabes, that's Greek for boy, but don't let the word fool you, was a victim or a player in the game. What we know, he was young, beautiful, and about to become the most talked about concubine in the city. His story starts here, in the Agora, but it won't end here. Fun fact, the Agora wasn't just a marketplace, it was the heart of Athenian democracy. Philosophers debated here, citizens voted here, and yes, slaves were sold here. Democracy and exploitation side by side. Classic Greece. Now let's get really uncomfortable. You're standing near the Perironterion, a stone basin for ritual hand-washing. The men are using it, but not for purification. One of them flicks water at the others, a crude joke about dirty deals. They're here for the auction, not of goods, of a person. And here's the fringe tidbit. Some accounts claim the wealthiest buyers would send tasters to these auctions, not for food, but to check the merchandise for disease, because nothing says I value you like making sure you're not going to give them the Athenian equivalent of food poisoning. The bidding starts low, a few drachma, then a voice from the back, smooth, like honey laced with hemlock, doubles the offer. The crowd parts. It's him, the tyrant, not a king, not a general, but the man who pulls their strings, and he's not here to negotiate. The tyrant's name. Let's call him Ariston, because if history forgot his real name, we can at least give him one that sounds appropriately smug. Ariston doesn't walk, he glides, like a shark who's figured out how to wear sandals. His himation is pure Milesian wool, dyed Tyrian purple. That's the color made from crushed sea snails, because of course it is. He doesn't even look at the other bidders, he just stares at the boy. Himeros. The boy's not bound, but he might as well be. His wrists are bare, no manacles, but his shoulders are tense, his knuckles white where they grip the edge of the stone platform. He's been cleaned up for the sale, oil gleaming on his skin, hair curled just so, but his eyes, wild, like a hare caught in a snare. Here's the mainstream historical fact. Athenian law technically forbade freeborn citizens from being sold into slavery. Key word, technically. If you were in debt, or captured in war, or just really unlucky, those rules got flexible fast. Ariston's lips curl. He's not buying a slave, he's buying a project. The auctioneer, a wiry man with a voice like a rusty hinge, hesitates. Do I hear another? Silence. One of the other bidders, a pot-bellied merchant who reeks of garum, that's fermented fish sauce, the ancient Greek version of cheap cologne, opens his mouth, then thinks better of it. You don't bid against a tyrant, not unless you want to wake up with a knife in your ribs and your body dumped in the Ilissos River. Ariston tosses a pouch of coins. It lands at the auctioneer's feet with a thud that sounds like a death sentence. Sold. Historians still argue whether Himeros was truly beautiful or if power just made him seem that way. Beauty, after all, wasn't just about symmetry, it was about status, the right curves of muscle, the right slant of cheekbones, the right availability. Now the quirky tidbit. Some accounts say Ariston didn't even take Himeros home that night. He left him standing there, humiliated while he strolled off to a symposium. Because nothing says I own you like making you wait. Himeros stands frozen. The crowd disperses. The moon dips behind the Parthenon. And you're still watching. Because this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a very bad idea. The gilded cage isn't a metaphor. Ariston's house near the Areopagus is literally gilded thin sheets of gold leaf pressed into the doorframes, catching the dawn light like a challenge to the gods. You trail behind Himeros as a silent shadow, watching his shoulders tense with each step deeper into the opulence. The floor mosaics here depict Zeus carrying off Ganymede, which, subtlety was never Ariston's strong suit. A slave girl couldn't be older than 12 scurries forward with a basin of rose water. Himeros ignores it. His gaze locks onto the fresco behind Ariston's couch, a bull-leaping scene from Crete, all taut muscles and reckless abandon. The message is clear. You're the bull. I'm the one holding the ropes. Historians still argue whether wealthy Athenians actually believed their own propaganda about mentoring young men. The official line, older lovers educated their Eromenos. That's the beloved in these arrangements. The reality, scrolls from the period mention lessons that involve significantly more wine than wisdom. Fun fact, the average Greek symposium wasn't just dudes lounging around philosophizing. There were strict drinking rules, 3 cups minimum, 1 to health, 1 to pleasure, 1 to madness, and slaves assigned as cratophoros to mix your wine with water, because even hedonism had bureaucracy. Now the fringe detail that'll make you side-eye every museum exhibit. Some Kylix drinking cups from this era show very explicit scenes, but only when you drain them. That's right, ancient Greek bottoms-up humor. Ariston probably owned a set. Himeros finally speaks. Why me? Ariston smiles, picking at a bunch of grapes. The sculptor Praxiteles is working on a new Aphrodite. He needed a model. I declined. He pops a grape into his mouth. I prefer my art private. The air thickens. Somewhere, a lyre string snaps. The tyrant's whim changes with the wind. One week, Himeros is paraded through the Agora in linen so fine it's nearly transparent. The next, he's barred from even stepping into the courtyard. You learn the rhythm of Ariston's moods, how he taps his signet ring twice when lying, how his voice drops to a whisper right before he orders someone flogged. Tonight, though, tonight's different. A messenger arrives, dust-streaked and panting, from Sicilian. The word alone makes Ariston's knuckles whiten around his cup. Sicily might as well be the moon for most Athenians, but for him, it's personal. The messenger whispers 3 words. He's coming back. Himeros. Pouring wine, goes statue still. Mainstream history fact. Sicilian was Athens, Vietnam, a disastrous naval expedition that bankrupted the city and left thousands dead in Sicilian quarries. But fringe accounts whisper about one survivor who crawled back, inch by inch, with a singular obsession. Ariston suddenly laughs, a sound like breaking pottery. Well then, he says, eyes sliding to Himeros, we'll need better locks. That night, Himeros is given a new gift, a gold cuff tight around his bicep. The inscription reads, Mn Heskakokos, he who remembers wrongs. Historians still argue whether this was a love token or a brand. Quirky tidbit. Greek cuff bracelets often had hollow compartments for poison, for perfume, for tiny scrolls of poetry. This one, when you shake it, something clinks. Himeros waits until the guard's footsteps fade. Then he pries open the cuff. Inside isn't a note, it's a tooth. The tooth rolls into Himeros's palm with a weight that feels unnatural, human, animal. The dim oil lamps in his chamber cast elongated shadows that make every object seem sinister. You notice his breathing hitch just slightly before he snaps the cuff shut with finality. Some messages don't need translation. Dawn finds Athens buzzing with news. The philosopher Diocles has been found dead in his bathhouse. Apoplexy, the city crier announces. But the slaves whisper about foam on his lips and fingers clawed into the mosaic tiles. The design, a grinning Dionysus. Historians still argue whether poisonings were as common as sources claim, or if ancient Greeks just loved dramatic gossip. What we know, hemlock wasn't the only option. Aconite, extracted from wolfsbane, caused paralysis and heart failure while keeping victims terrifyingly aware until the end. Fun fact, Athenian bathhouses doubled as intelligence hubs. The steam room's acoustics carried whispers perfectly, and the elaborate heating system's hypercausts had crawl spaces large enough for observers. The first known instance of state-sponsored eavesdropping. Himeros watches the commotion from Ariston's rooftop garden, plucking absent-mindedly at the cuff. Below, a Spartan envoy, all oiled muscles and barely concealed disdain, examines Diocles' body being carried away. Their eyes meet. The Spartan nods almost imperceptibly. A coincidence? Maybe. But when Himeros turns, Ariston stands in the doorway, idly testing the edge of a pruning knife against his thumb. Enjoying the view, he asks. The blade catches sunlight. I hear Syracuse has similar gardens. The threat hangs unspoken. Syracuse, where men go to disappear. The symposium that night reeks of overcompensation. Ariston's hall overflows with the best of Athens, politicians with wine-stained beards, poets who've sold their wit to the highest bidder, and a particularly obnoxious Macedonian mercenary boasting about his exploits. The air swims with the scent of roasted goat and myrrh, an attempt to mask something fouler beneath. Himeros serves wine with mechanical precision. You notice how his fingers linger near certain cups, how he memorizes which guests refuse the mixed crater. The Spartan from earlier reclines in the corner, saying little but missing nothing. His name, you learn, is Brasidas, no relation to the famous general, but carrying himself like he's waiting for the comparison. Mainstream history fact, symposia followed strict seating by status. The best spot? Second from the host's right, close enough for intimacy, far enough for plausible deniability. Guess who's sitting there tonight? A Sicilian merchant with Syracuse sand still in his sandals. The drinking starts in earnest. A poet recites verses comparing Ariston's eyes to the Aegean at storm's edge, a backhanded compliment if you know Greek weather patterns. Laughter erupts too loud, too long, then the Sicilian raises his cup. To absent friends he toasts. May they find their way home. The room chills. Ariston's smile could frost olives. Historians still argue whether the infamous poisoned cup incidents actually involved poison. Some scholars suggest psychological warfare, serving empty threats in gold vessels to watch victims panic themselves to death. Quirky tidbit, ancient Greeks believed rubbing a dried salamander in your cup would neutralize poison. It didn't, but watching guests lick amphibians certainly weeded out the paranoid. Himeros moves to refill Brasidas' cup. The Spartan covers it with one hand while sliding a fig toward him with the other. Inside the split fruit, a folded scrap of papyrus. The message contains just 3 words, but Himeros's knuckles whiten around it. The Spartan murmurs, "The owl flies at midnight," a known code, a warning, because in Athens even the deliverer might be the threat. The fig's pulp sticks to your fingers as you unfold the note alongside Himeros. They know about Corinth. 3 words that change everything. Corinth, the city where Ariston's ships mysteriously sank last winter, where an entire crew vanished without bodies to mourn. Himeros burns the papyrus in an oil lamp, watching the edges curl black. His reflection in the polished bronze mirror shows a man realizing he's been a pawn in someone else's game, much longer than he thought. Moonlight leaks through the shutters as Himeros slips into the Andron shadows. The symposium has descended into drunken chaos. A poet wails about lost love, while the Macedonian mercenary arm wrestles a slave boy for kisses. Ariston sits motionless at the head, watching Himeros like a spider counting vibrations in its web. Historians still argue whether the famous escape tunnels under Athenian villas were architectural features or just convenient fiction for stories like ours. The truth: every wealthy home had a pastor's, a back corridor for slaves to move unseen. Tonight, it's Himeros's highway to desperation. Fun fact: Ancient Greek doors swung inward specifically to trap intruders, a design quirk Himeros exploits when he hears footsteps. He freezes behind a pillar as a guard stumbles past, drunk on unmixed wine. The man vomits into a crater, classy, before collapsing. Himeros steps over him, bare feet silent on the cool marble. At the service entrance, a figure waits, not Brasidas but a woman with the calloused hands of a weaver and eyes sharp as obsidian. She presses a bundle into his hands, rough-spun cloak, sailor's knife, and most precious of all, a citizen's lead token, the ultimate disguise. "Go north to the grove," she whispers. "The trees will." A crash. Ariston's voice slices the darkness. "Find him." Himeros runs. Behind him the house erupts in torchlight and shouting. Ahead, only the fickle mercy of the gods. The sacred olive grove of Academus smells of crushed herbs and danger. Moonlight filters through silver leaves as Himeros crouches behind an altar to Athena, clutching the sailor's knife. Athenian law makes this ground inviolable in theory. In practice, you notice fresh bloodstains on the altar's base. Even the gods can't protect you from determined men. Footsteps crunch on dry leaves. Himeros tenses, then relaxes slightly. When Brasidas emerges, now wearing the plain kitten of a metic laborer, the Spartan surveys the grove with military precision before murmuring, "You're shorter than I remembered." Mainstream history fact, this very grove would later become Plato's academy. But tonight, it's a battleground. Brasidas explains the situation in clipped phrases. Ariston didn't just sink those ships, he sold their cargo to Persian satraps. Treason wrapped in silk. Corinth was supposed to be the proof, but the only witness, a ship's boy, vanished from Ariston's cellar 3 days ago. With help, Brasidas adds, eyeing Himeros's new cuff. The Spartan taps his own arm in the same spot. The tooth wasn't a threat, it was a message. Historians still argue whether Athens' eastern wall really had that vulnerable gate near the Lyceum. The fringe accounts say yes, and more, that for the right price guards would look the other way at midnight. The wrong price, that's what Himeros carries. The lead token burns against his chest. Quirky tidbit, ancient fugitives often rub themselves with onion juice to throw off dogs. As Himeros does this, Brasidas nearly smiles. Spartans use wolf piss, more memorable. They're almost to the wall when torchlight floods the path. Ariston steps into view, flanked by Scythian archers. His himation is disheveled, his smile unhinged. Leaving so soon, he teasks at Brasidas. "And here I thought Spartans valued directness." Brasidas doesn't blink. "We do," he whistles, and the trees come alive with armed men. But these aren't Spartans, they're Sicilians, and their swords are already drawn. Steel whispers against leather as a dozen Sicilian blades clear their scabbards. The torches gutter in the sudden wind, casting monstrous shadows that dance across Ariston's face. For the first time tonight, you see it, fear, raw and unguarded, flashing behind his eyes before the mask slams back down. Brasidas steps forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a warship's prow through foam. "The boy comes with us," not a request, a statement of fact. The Scythian archers glance at Ariston, bowstrings creaking. One wrong breath tonight and this grove becomes a pincushion. Himeros stays statue still, but his fingers find the sailor's knife hidden in his cloak. The blade feels laughably small against trained killers, yet its weight whispers better than nothing. Historians still argue whether Sicilian mercenaries truly fought with those distinctive curved daggers shown on vase paintings. The answer, deadlier. These men carry macarai, single-edged swords designed to hook behind knees and slit throats in one motion. Their leader, a grizzled veteran missing 3 fingers, licks his lips at the Scythians. "Your arrows fly fast," he rasps. "Our steel flies faster." Fun fact, ancient Greek warfare had strict no fighting during religious festivals rules. Too bad nobody told the Sicilians or noticed Brasidas deliberately herding everyone toward the altar of Hermes, god of thieves and trickery. The stone base is stained with decades of sacrificial wine and blood. Ariston's laugh sounds like a drowning man's last gasp. You think Syracuse will protect you. He's staring at Himeros now, voice dropping to an intimate snarl. "I made you. I can A horn blast shatters the night, distant at first, then closer. The city watch. Brasidas smiles. "Ah, my other friends. Chios, a poor strategist but an excellent escape artist." In the scrambling darkness, Himeros feels a hand grab his arm. Not Brasidas, not a Sicilian. The weaver woman from earlier drags him behind the altar as torches topple and men shout. She presses something cold into his palm, a kylix fragment with a single word scratched into the glaze. "Piraeus." Then she's gone, melting into the shadows like she was never there. The port of Pirae stinks of fish guts and desperation. Dawn finds Himeros hunched in a fisherman's shack, watching triremes glide across the harbor like water beetles. The kylix fragment digs into his calloused palm. That single word, Piraeus, could mean salvation or a spectacularly elaborate death trap. Outside, two Sicilian mercenaries pretend to mend nets while scanning the docks. They're terrible at it. You notice how one keeps adjusting his belt, where a dagger sits awkwardly, how the other's fisherman's tan ends suspiciously at his wrists. Himeros watches through a crack in the warped wood, counting heartbeats. Mainstream history fact: Piraeus was Athens' lifeline, 3 fortified harbors, supplying grain, timber, and most importantly, naval power. But fringe accounts tell of the Kirkopes, a secretive guild of harbor masters who controlled everything from smuggling routes to forged travel papers for a price. A shadow blocks the shack's slivered light. Brasidas ducks inside, smelling of seawater and iron. He tosses Himeros a bundle, coarse-woven tunic, rope-soled sandals, and most precious, a cymbalon, the broken pottery shard that serves as a sailor's identification. The Spartan's hands are nicked with fresh cuts. "Syracusan ship at Pier 7, he murmurs, "black sail with blue trim. Captain owes me a favor." Historians still argue whether ancient Mediterranean ships actually used those colorful sail patterns we see in art. The answer is yes, and the designs were as recognizable as modern airline logos. That blue trim, the mark of Dionysius I's personal fleet. Quirky tidbit: Greek sailors believed rubbing garlic on the mast prevented storms. The Syracusan ship reeks of it. Brasidas grips Himeros' shoulder. "The tooth was your brother's. He lived long enough to name his torturer." The world tilts. That cellar, the screams Himeros pretended not to hear. Ariston's smile as he fastened the gold cuff. Somewhere in the maze of warehouses, a shout goes up. They've been found. Brasidas shoves Himeros toward the docks. "Run!" Behind them, the Sicilians drop all pretense. Nets abandoned, daggers drawn. Ahead, the ship's gangplank and freedom, and beyond that, Syracuse, where vengeance waits. The gangplank sways beneath your feet like a drunk at a symposium. Salt spray stings your eyes as you follow Himeros aboard the Syracusan vessel, a sleek pentecanter built for speed, not comfort. The deck reeks of tar and the peculiar stench of the sea turtle carcass lashed to the prow. Superstition claims they ward off storms. Behind you, Piraeus burns with morning light and distant shouts. Too close, always too close. Brasidas doesn't board. He remains on the dock, arms crossed, watching the Sicilian pursuers skid to a halt at the water's edge. One draws a knife. The Spartan merely cocks his head. "Try it," as the ship's crew saw through the mooring ropes. The last thing you see before the oars bite water is Brasidas flipping a coin to the nearest mercenary, payment for their trouble or insult. With Spartans, it's always both. Himeros stumbles below decks, where the air sits thick with the musk of 50 unwashed sailors, and their cargo amphorae of Sicilian wine stamped with Dionysius's owl emblem. He presses his back against the curved hull, finally releasing the breath he's held since the grove. The gold cuff glints dully in the darkness. Emenashika course. Remember wrongs indeed. Historians still argue whether Greek merchant ships actually carried secret compartments for fugitives. The evidence? A few suspiciously empty pithoi storage jars found in wrecks, just wide enough to hide a man if he didn't mind smelling like fermented fish for weeks. Himeros won't need one. The captain, a grizzled brute missing an ear, jerks his chin toward a pallet behind the mast. "You're the Spartans' problem now," he growls. "Try not to die before Syracuse." Ancient sailors navigated by steering toward the smell, pine resins from Cyprus, volcanic sulfur from Thera, even the notorious stench of the Alexandria docks carried miles out to sea. This ship follows the scent of vengeance. The voyage should take 7 days. On the third night, Himeros startles awake to fingers at his throat, not attacking, but pressing something cold into his hand. A woman's face flickers in the lamplight, the Hetaira from Corinth, her coal-lined eyes gleaming. The scent of jasmine cuts through the ship's stink. Impossible, yet here she is. "Little brother," she murmurs, slipping a ring into his palm. The carved carnelian shows an eagle clutching a snake. "You'll need this where you're going." Then she's gone, vanished like sea foam. The ring fits perfectly. Himeros stares at it until dawn, remembering another hand, smaller, warmer, pressing a toy boat into his grasp a lifetime ago. Some debts can't be repaid with coin. Syracuse rises from the sea like a clenched fist. The great limestone walls glow honey gold in the sunset as the ship glides into Ortygia's fortified harbor. Himeros stands at the prow, the Hetaira's ring heavy on his finger. Below the surface, dark shapes dart between submerged ruins, foundations of the old city, drowned when Dionysius expanded the docks. A fitting welcome, beauty built on drowned bones. The captain grunts as sailors lower the anchor stone. "Keep that cuff hidden," he warns. Dionysius likes his pets unmarked. You notice how the crew suddenly avoids looking at Himeros, how the first mate makes a subtle warding gesture. That cuff isn't just gold, it's a brand, and everyone here knows the hand that wields the iron. Mainstream history fact: Syracuse under Dionysius I was a paranoid's paradise. Hidden passages in the palace walls, hollowed-out statues for spies to eavesdrop, even a listening cave engineered to amplify whispers in the throne room. The tyrant trusted no one, especially not handsome Athenian refugees. A detachment of guards marches onto the dock, their armor suspiciously polished for a routine inspection. Their commander, a lanky man with a nose like a ship's prow, examines Himeros with the clinical interest of a butcher sizing up livestock. "The eagle will see you now." No name, just a title. The guards form up, their spear butts striking the stones in unison. March or be dragged. Historians still argue whether Dionysius' famous ear, a parabolic listening device in his prison cave, actually worked or was just psychological torture. The prisoner's graffiti suggests both. Crude drawings of giant ears alongside scratched pleas for death. Quirky tidbit: ancient Sicilian bodyguards carried guest gifts, small lead tokens that could be thrown as distractions or pressed into palms as bribes. One guard slips Himeros such a token during the march. The side facing him shows an owl, the other side, when he risks a glance, a smeared bloody fingerprint. The palace gates swallow Himeros whole, through torchlit corridors past courtyards where exotic beasts pace cages. Dionysius collected leopards like other men collect wine, up a narrow stair that winds tighter and tighter until the eagle's eyrie, not a throne room, a map room, and at its center a massive mosaic of the Mediterranean, every city marked by a gemstone. Athens glints with lapis lazuli. A man stands with his back to you, moving Sicilian jasper ships across the sea lanes. He turns, not Dionysius, Brasidas, smiling. "Welcome to the war," says the Spartan. Behind him the Hetaira steps from the shadows, her smile sharp as a scorpion's sting. The mosaic floor seems to tilt beneath your feet as Brasidas' words hang in the air. "Welcome to the war." Himeros's fingers find the carnelian ring, the eagle and snake now making terrible sense. Because this isn't just a map room, it's a war room. And Brasidas isn't just a Spartan. He's the Spartan Dionysius' shadow strategist, the architect of Syracuse's infamous siege engines, the man who turned Sicilian quicksand into a weapon at Motia. The Hetaira moves to a bronze brazier, stirring the coals with an iron rod. The light catches the silver streaks in her elaborate braids. "You look disappointed," she murmurs. "Were you expecting chains, a dungeon?" Her laugh is the sound a dagger makes sliding from flesh. "We save those for willing guests." Historians still argue whether Dionysius actually employed female spies in his network of kataskopoi. The orthodox view says no. The Sicilian folk songs, They tell of the owl's daughters who could drink a man under the table and steal his secrets before dawn. Looking at this woman's hands, the calluses from harp strings, the scars from what might be poison rings, you believe the songs. Mainstream history fact: Syracuse's great harbor could hold 300 warships in its heyday, each requiring 170 oarsmen. The logistical nightmare made Dionysius obsessed with grain routes, which explains the tiny golden wheat sheaves marking certain ports on the mosaic. Brasidas nudges a jasper ship toward Athens with his foot. Ariston sold your brother's fleet to the Persians. The cargo, he meets Himeros's gaze. Not grain, not silk, Greek fire precursors. The words land like a trireme's ram. Greek fire, the Byzantines' later superweapon, had its roots in Sicilian alchemy. Dionysius's scientists had been perfecting it for years, and Ariston, he'd been smuggling the ingredients east. Himeros's voice comes out raw. Why tell me this now? The Hetaira smiles. Because tonight, she says, producing a familiar gold cuff from her sash, you're going back. She tosses it onto the mosaic. It lands right over Athens. The inscription glints. Emeni Shikakos. Remember wrongs indeed. The ship stinks of sheep fat and lies. Himeros stands at the stern of this leaky hulkers, a rounded merchant vessel slower than a lame donkey, watching Syracuse shrink behind them. The same captain who brought him here now spits over the rail at the mention of their return voyage. 20 days to Piraeus if the gods hate us, he grumbles. Less if we jettison dead weight. His eyes linger on Himeros. The gold cuff sits heavy again on Himeros's arm, freshly aged with vinegar and ash to mimic months of wear. Inside its hollow curve, a papyrus scrap coated in wax. Dionysius' terms written so small the scribe likely went blind. The Hetaira had pressed it into place herself, her perfume clinging to the metal. Ariston will check, she'd warned. He knows where to look. Historians still argue whether ancient spies really used such elaborate dead drops. The answer lies in the Aeschylus quote etched above Dionysius' dungeon entrance. In war, truth is the first casualty. Fun fact: Greek merchant ships often carried live sheep, both for fresh milk and as emergency ballast. The bleating from below decks provides cover as Himeros rehearses his role, the broken concubine crawling back to his master after failing to escape. The part that terrifies him, it's not entirely an act. On the 18th night the storm hits. Not Poseidon's rage, just a squall nasty enough to send sailors scrambling. Himeros uses the chaos to slip the carnelian ring into a crack between deck planks. The eagle and snake disappear into the wood. A sacrifice or safeguard? Even he isn't sure. Dawn reveals the Attic coast. As Piraeus's towers materialize through the mist, the captain grabs Himeros's wrist. Remember, he hisses, the Sicilian doesn't forgive, doesn't forget. The man's missing ear takes on new meaning. The dock swarms with customs officials. Himeros spots Ariston's men before they see him, hulking Thracians leaning on spears by the fish market. He straightens his shoulders, lets the cuff gleam, and steps into the light. The game begins anew. The Thracians don't embrace him. They don't even speak. Just clamp meaty hands around his arms and march him through Piraeus like a stolen amphora. The streets smell of fish guts and burning pitch, same as always, but the faces are different, harder, hungrier. A group of Spartan mercenaries watches from a wine shop, their red cloaks dull with dust. One raises a cup in silent toast as Himeros passes. Ariston's villa has new scars, blackened patches on the courtyard walls where torches burned too long, fresh mortar sealing cracks that weren't there before, and the silence, no slaves whispering, no lyre music drifting from the andron, just the drip of a broken fountain and the skitter of a rat across the mosaic floor. He's waiting in the shadows. Ariston steps forward, his Himerosan cinched too tight, his beard freshly trimmed to hide the tremor in his jaw. "You look terrible," he says. A joke, or a test. Himeros lets his knees hit the floor. The gold cuff scrapes marble. I had nowhere else to go. A pause, then fingers grip his chin, forcing his head up. Ariston's eyes search for lies the way a starving man picks at bones. Syracuse didn't want you. They wanted me dead. Historians still argue whether the famous prodigal slave trope was common or just a convenient plot device. The truth: masters loved a groveling return. It proved their power. Ariston's thumb brushes the cuff. "And yet you kept my gift. Himeros doesn't flinch. To remember my place. A snort. The fingers release him. Breathe, you reek of Sicilian. As Himeros turns to leave, Ariston adds, almost casually, the Spartan's head arrived last week, in a jar of honey. The lie burns like acid. Himeros keeps walking, because tucked in his sash, hidden even from the Thracians' rough searches, is the mercenary's token, the one with the owl and the blood. The bathhouse steam reeks of lavender and deception. Himeros scrubs Sicilian salt from his skin, while the slave boy assigned to watch him dozes by the hypercaust. Through the half-open door, you catch glimpses of Ariston's new guests, Carian mercenaries with scimitars at their hips, their laughter too loud for a house in mourning. A shadow flickers across the ceiling. The slave boy snores on. Then a whisper from the heating duct. Look down. Himeros obeys. A scrap of papyrus floats in the bathwater, ink bleeding but still legible. Midnight. The olive press. The handwriting is Brasidas'. Impossible. Unless the head in the jar wasn't his. Unless none of this is what it seems. Historians still argue whether Greek bathhouses were truly hotbeds of espionage or just convenient storytelling devices. The answer? Both. The steam hid faces, the acoustics carried whispers, and the slaves, they knew everything and said nothing. Fun fact: the ancient olive press near Athens' Dipollon Gate was abandoned after a slave revolt in 415. The stains on its stones aren't olive oil. Midnight finds Himeros picking through moonlit rubble, the gold cuff stuffed with wool to mute its clinking. The press looms like a forgotten beast, its wooden screws groaning in the wind. Then movement. A figure steps from the shadows. Not Brasidas, the Macedonian mercenary from the symposium. His armor gleams dully, his smile all teeth. Gold or glory, he asks, flipping a coin. Either way you'll bleed. Himeros reaches for his stolen dagger. The Macedonian shakes his head. Not for you. He jerks his chin toward the city. For him, Ariston's villa burns on the horizon, and the Carian mercenaries, they're not guarding it, they're sacking it. The night air tastes of smoke and spilled wine as you sprint with Himeros toward the burning villa. The Macedonians flank you, not attacking, not protecting, just herding like sheepdogs with blood in their teeth. Their leader, Cassandros, he grunts when pressed, keeps flipping that damned coin. Heads for glory, tails for gold. It hasn't landed once. Ariston's courtyard gates hang broken. Inside, Carian mercenaries laugh as they torch tapestries with oil lamps. One pauses to piss on the mosaic of Ganymede. The Andron's doors have been axed open from the inside. This wasn't an attack. It was a betrayal. Cassandros grabs your arm before you can enter. He's not here. A jerk of his chin toward the hills. Ran like a hare when the first torch fell. Himeros stares at the flames. Why? The Macedonian's grin shows 3 missing teeth. Turns out Persian gold spends just as well as Athenian. He flips the coin again. This time he catches it, slapping it onto his wrist with deliberate slowness. Heads glory it is. Historians still argue whether the so-called mercenary revolt of 4021 BCE was spontaneous or orchestrated. The account etched into a wine jug found near Piraeus suggests both. The wolf bites the hand only when the shepherd pays in rot. Fun fact: ancient Greek mercenaries developed early forms of disability insurance. If you lost a limb in service, your contract guaranteed either a lump sum of silver or, in one verified case, a prosthetic made by the same smiths who crafted armor. A scream slices through the chaos, not Ariston's, a woman's. The hetaira from Corinth stumbles from the servants' quarters, her elaborate braids half burned away. She clutches a bloodied scroll case to her chest. When she sees Himeros, her eyes widen. You're supposed to be. Cassandros's dagger finds her ribs before she finishes. As she falls, the scroll case rolls to Himeros's feet. Inside, a single tooth, freshly pulled. Dawn finds you in the caves of Mount Lycabettus, the tooth clenched in Himeros's fist like some grotesque prayer bead. The scroll case held more: a child's drawing of a boat, a lock of hair tied with red string, a lead merchant's seal stamped with the owl of Syracuse, family relics, bait, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to here. You stare at the cave mouth skeptically. It reeks of goat piss and mushrooms. Cassandros kicks aside a rotting wineskin. Dionysius's men used these tunnels during the war. Runs all the way to the Academy Grove. He lights a torch, revealing crude arrows scratched into the stone. Your tyrant's halfway to Corinth by now. But this, he taps the tooth in Himeros's hand. This says he left something behind. The tunnel swallows you whole. The air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic. Your foot kicks an empty cup, symposium quality, its glaze still perfect. Then another, and another. A trail of luxury leading deeper into darkness. Historians still argue whether these caves were truly part of an ancient escape network. The pottery shards say yes. The skeletons in manacles say ask the wrong questions. Mainstream history fact: Corinth in this era was running an elaborate scam selling authentic Athenian artifacts looted during the war while secretly bankrolling both sides. Their pottery workshops kept meticulous records that might explain why Ariston fled there. The tunnel ends abruptly at a bronze door, not locked, welcoming. Cassandros sniffs the handle. Cypress oil. Someone's been here recently. Himeros pushes it open. The chamber beyond takes your breath away. Walls lined with cedar shelves holding hundreds of scrolls, their tags fluttering like moths. A scholar's paradise, until you read the titles. Ship manifests, Melos to Ephesus, grain yields, Sicilian variants, on liquid fire, Syrian formulas. This isn't a library, it's Ariston's ledger. And in the center of the room, kneeling over a brazier as if in prayer, the Spartan. Brasidas looks up, his face half-healed from what must have been a brutal beating. He doesn't smile. Took you long enough. Brasidas' fingers hover over the brazier, where scroll edges curl black before crumbling to ash. He kept records like a Spartan. The warrior mutters, stupid. The firelight catches the fresh brand on his neck. A crude owl, Syracuse's mark. Turns out Dionysius doesn't send heads in jars. He sends messages in scars. Himeros steps over scattered papyri, his shadow stretching long across the ledger shelves. One column catches your eye. Payment 50 talents silver. Delivery, Persian gates. Commodity, fire. No wonder Ariston ran. This isn't just treason, it's a war crime waiting to happen. Cassandros kicks open a chest. Gold coins spill across the floor, mingling with something far more interesting. Clay tokens, each stamped with a different ship's name. Corinthian registry, he grunts. Clever bastard used neutral ships. Historians still argue whether the infamous liquid fire was truly developed in this era, or if later chroniclers exaggerated. The formulas in this room settle the debate. Precise ratios of naphtha, quicklime, and something called thalassios pharmakos, sea poison, burned on water. Stick to skin, the stuff of nightmares. Fun fact, ancient Greek fireproofing involved soaking wood in alum and vinegar. Judging by the blackened stains near the door, someone tried and failed to protect this room. Brasidas rises stiffly. He'll be at the docks by now. Corinth-bound ship called Thetis's Gift. His eyes lock onto Himeros. You know what happens if that cargo reaches Persia. The gold cuff feels heavier than ever. Nemius kakos. Remember wrongs. Cassandros flips his coin. Catches it. Heads. Glory it is. You burst from the caves into blinding noon. The city below seethes. Smoke from the villa still stains the sky, and the Agora buzzes with rumors of Spartan mercenaries near the Dipolon gate. No one notices 3 more armed men sprinting toward Piraeus. The Thetis's Gift is already unmoored when you arrive, her oars churning water. Ariston stands at the stern, his purple himation whipping in the wind. For a heartbeat, he and Himeros lock eyes across the harbor. Then the Sicilian arrow takes him through the throat. From the shadows of a fish stall, the hetaira lowers her bow. Alive after all. The body burns on a pyre of broken ship timbers. No ceremony, no mourners, just Himeros watching as the flames eat the last of Ariston's lies. The hetaira stands apart, her bow slung across her back. She hasn't spoken since the shot. Brasidas and Cassandros are already gone. The Spartan to Syracuse with the ledgers, the Macedonian to parts unknown, though you suspect his coin finally landed. The Thetis's Gift smolders offshore, her liquid fire cargo safely drowned in deep water. Night falls softly over Piraeus. The fisherman's lamps bob like earthbound stars. Himeros finally pries off the gold cuff and throws it into the pyre. The inscription melts first. Historians still argue what became of the real Himeros. Some say he died in Sicily. Others claim he opened a wine shop in Crete. The vaguest accounts mention a golden stranger at Dionysius' court, who always smelled of the sea. You feel the story winding down now, the way waves smooth the edges of a shattered vase. The salt air soothes your lungs. The fire crackles its last. The hetaira approaches, pressing something into your palm, a carnelian ring, not the eagle and snake, a new design, a ship sailing toward the horizon. Go, she says. Then she's gone, swallowed by the night. You stand at the water's edge, the ring warm in your hand. Somewhere, an owl calls. Somewhere else, a lyre plays. The world moves on, and so do you. The embers glow faintly now, their heat fading like the memory of this story. You breathe deep, the scent of pine from distant mountains, the brine of a sea that's carried both conquerors and refugees since time began. Athens sleeps behind you, her marble streets holding tonight's secrets until dawn. Maybe you imagine the whisper of oars in the distance. Maybe it's just the waves. History, after all, is mostly maybes. The fragments we piece together from scorched scrolls and wine-stained poetry. The rest belongs to the shadows. Your fingers absently trace the carnelian ring. Safe travels, it seems to say. Fair winds, the kind of ending poets would later call bittersweet, though you suspect Himeros would have snorted at the sentiment. The fire gutters out. Somewhere an olive branch sighs in the wind. Tomorrow the fisherman will find the ashes and shrug. Tomorrow the Agora will buzz with fresh gossip. But tonight lingers in this perfect hush between endings and beginnings. So let the sea rock you gentle. Let the stars keep their secrets. And when you close your eyes at last, may your dreams be light as a Syracusan breeze, soft as a Spartan's rare smile, fleeting as the spark that dances on the waves before disappearing into the dark. Sweet dreams, traveler. The story's done.